Alright, it is that time of day again for me to stream Odinmade Hero, the programming series where I learn from Casey Muratori as he programs Handmade Hero in C and C++, and I try and translate it over into Odin. Thus, Odinmade Hero. Off to a bit of a late start today, but that's okay. We'll just have to be better and work faster to get through the code. Yesterday we worked on adding this spatial partitioning for entities to our budding game engine, and unfortunately I did not have the time over the past day since the last stream to really dig in and what was that? It was like change entity location. I didn't have time to dig in and really study the code to make sure I knew what was going on, but I think that's okay because we're not even using it yet. And so I think it probably makes sense to wait for Casey to finish showing us how we're gonna go about using this code. And then once it's in a more complete state, and probably over the weekend, I'll try and make some time to really let this stuff sink in. One thing that I took the time to look at doing since yesterday, and this has come up a couple times now, is I was looking at these calls to get world chunk where we were passing in this allocate flag to basically say, yes, go ahead and allocate a chunk if we don't find one at this position, or not, and by default we were saying no, go ahead and do not allocate. And the way Casey does it is he actually passes in the arena or not based on whether he wants that call to allocate, but that doesn't really line up quite one-to-one for us because we have an allocator that's off of our context, this sort of Odin notion of passing an implicit context around everywhere inside of every single procedure call. There's some invisible context, right, like this. And you can do it contextless, I think, like this or something like that. But or would that be like this? I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe that's it. If you didn't want it to have a context, but we want it to have a context because we want that allocator that's off of the context, and we want to use it to allocate our world chunks. But it's just a little bit weird in this case because Casey makes it explicit. And so I was like, I don't really like this flag. Should I go ahead and try and actually pass in a pointer to the allocator? And I tried just doing it off of the context itself, passing it in by reference like this, but it wouldn't let me do that, because we can't actually take the address of the context allocator, but we can create a new allocator variable. And I was kind of worried about doing this because I was afraid that it was going to essentially clone the arena underneath the hood, and so therefore I wasn't sure if we were actually going to be, if we pass in this allocator now, like you can see me doing here, I wasn't sure if that was actually going to pass in a copy of that arena that's underlying this allocator, but I don't think it does at this point. I printed out, and I could have, dug into the Odin code base, but I just didn't have time. I got other stuff going on. I've got a job, got all these other things. I'm trying to, be a parent and a good husband too, and all those things take time, so I can't do all the things as much as I would like to have the time to. You gotta prioritize and do as much as you can do and save the rest for later. So as much as I want to dig into the code base and understand how that actually works underneath the hood, I went ahead and just experimented by printing out both the context allocator and a new allocator variable being set off of the context allocator, and it looks like they point to the same base address underneath the hood. And therefore, I think we're safe to do this. I think, maybe this isn't the most idiomatic way to do it with Odin, but I think that's fine. If there's a better way to do it, it will reveal itself to us at some point. So I'm going to stick with this for now, and we'll see how it goes. I mean, it still builds and runs fine and everything, but the issue we would run into, if there's going to be an issue at all, is when we actually go to, I don't know. Are we calling get world chunk? We do. We definitely call. Maybe we don't actually call that anywhere else right now. there's here, and change entity location twice, but no other place. So yeah, we're not actually using this. We'll see if this blows up in our faces later, and it'll be a good learning opportunity, if nothing else. So there's that. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. I'll let Casey kick it off, and we'll keep writing this code.
There we go. I have stopped, and then I have started the recording again. Known as cycling recording to those of you who are experts on Twitch. Here's the thing, people. I'm prepared to say it. I'm prepared to say it. Welcome to Handmade Hero, the show where we code an entire game live on Twitch. No engines, no libraries, using only our typing fingers. Now, today is a very special day because just before the stream, I decided I was tired of looking at a bunch of yellow rectangles while I was coding. And so I did it. I just flat out did it before the stream. I decided it was time for Handmade Hero test assets 2.zip. So if you are someone who's following along at home, you will note that if you go to the link that you received in your email, if you pre-ordered the game on handmadehero.org, if you go to the link that you got from the pre-order, there is now the test asset zip has been updated from 1 to 2. We are on 2 now. And basically what I did is I grabbed some of our assets. Of course, you can't preview them because Windows Bitmap Viewer doesn't actually work, even though they invented the format. But basically I grabbed some rocks, some trees, and some tufts of grass and such that I wanted to use so that we could stop using yellow rectangles for walls and we could actually start having some actual things there. We won't get carried away with it, but I was just at the point where I was just tired of looking at them, so I decided it was time to grab some assets. So, for those of you who like to follow along with the stream, now would be a good time to go and grab that. And it's got the old test directory, it's got all the same stuff in there so everyone can follow along as well, but it's also got this test2 directory, and basically what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to the data directory and you're going to want to go ahead and place that test2 right on in there, right?
I don't think I've actually done that, so I should go ahead and check. Yeah, I haven't done that yet. I think I can just copy from the same project that I have in Zig. Yeah, so I just copy data test2 from here and put that over in my Odin projects data directory. I think I'm good. Yep. I didn't really show that happening, but there we go. Just doing what Casey suggested, because it looks like we're going to start loading in some of these, which, oh great, it didn't actually copy any of the files over. That's nice. How would I go about copying the whole thing? Can I just wildcard it? Whoops, let's do that. And try again. There we go. So now we got all these assets here. We got some tree assets, some ground, some rocks, some tufts. What's a tuft, you might ask? I think it's like a little sprig. So some nice nature assets for us to load in here and start playing around with.
So now you've got that test2 in there, and now we can load stuff from that, and that will be good. So let's go ahead and dive right in. We basically had a little bit of cleanup to do. We had some testing to do, but basically there's one thing that we hadn't written yet, so we weren't really back to feature parity from yesterday when we made our spatial partition for our entities. So what I'd like to do is just go ahead and get that done, and then maybe we can replace those yellow rectangles with some actual trees or something, which would be nice, and do some other stuff like that, just because it's the time, you know, you gotta just go with the flow sometimes, and I feel like that's where the flow is going, and so that's where we're gonna go. All right, so if I go ahead and open up handmade.cpp, you will remember that the thing where we left it, we were not actually back to, oops, what just happened there? Dev end, there we go. So you'll remember that we were at the point where we were running again, but we didn't have any entities, right? Because we did the thing that actually supposed to bring entities into the working set actually hasn't been done yet, and so we have to go ahead and write that actual code. If you remember, I just basically straight up commented it out. So in the set camera, you can see there's an if0 around it. So I guess I shouldn't say commented it out. I if0'd it out, more specifically. 6 of one, half dozen of the other. And so what I need to do is I need to actually write this now using our spatial partition, because it's exactly things like this, which are spatial queries that are supposed to be accelerated by our partition. So now is the time when we have to start actually using that and doing some actual real stuff with it. So what I want to do is, previously what we did is we just looped over all the tiles in the world that were inside our camera's radius, and then we said, okay, we're going to take that and say all of those tiles, anything that's in that range of tiles, will now come into the working set. And so what I want to do is I'm going to do exactly the same thing, but what I want to do is just do that by chunk. So what I want to do is just say any of the chunks that overlap the camera, will pull those in, and that will be sufficient for now. Now we might want to get a little more fancy later and actually check for the entities inside the chunk to see if they match the camera bounds specifically, but I don't actually know if we really do want to do that or not, because the high entity list is kind of a fluid concept anyway. We don't have to necessarily cap it to an exact boundary, certainly not yet. So we can kind of fudge that a little bit if we want to. All right, so what I'm going to do here is go ahead and uncomment this out. This is no longer going to work, obviously, because we had the camera P, and it was using the abs tile stuff, which we got rid of. And so now what we want to do is we want to have chunk X, chunk Y instead, right? And then we have our tile span, and our tile span is presumably no longer that relevant either, because what we'd really like to do is talk about chunk spans more specifically, right? And so we do have something, I guess one thing that I should bring up that is kind of relevant here is we don't want to be oscillating a lot where we're moving things in and out because our bounds don't match up. So that might actually be one good reason to sort of think this through a little bit more carefully. For example, let me go ahead and do a little diagram here for you. So if we imagine that we've got, of course, gotta always ruin my colors, don't you, Mischief? Mischief's pretty good so far. I feel like we need to like email them and say, please just fix the bugs in it, and it would be pretty awesome, you know? Anyway, so if we're in a situation where we've got, again, we've got our sort of screen that we're looking at, and here is our active region that we're talking about. Well, the active region, as far as the camera bounds are concerned, is actually exact, right? It's a rectangle that we made, centered around wherever the camera happens to be, which is this center point here, and it is exactly a rectangle that goes that way. Now, remember, our chunks, however, could be at any alignment on here, right? The chunks, we don't know how the chunks are aligned relative to the camera. The camera could be free roaming. We have no guarantee of how the chunks align. And so if we pulled entities into the working set on just tile boundaries, right, that would include an entity that would say right there, okay, and it would come into the high set. So on the last frame, when we looked through the tile chunks that needed to get pulled in, and we pulled in this one, it would pull in, a guy, it would pull him in, right? But on the subsequent frame, when we go to check the camera bounds, which are here, we would find that he was outside it, and we'd move him right back. We basically just cycle him between low and high, low and high, low and high. So we kind of want to make sure that we line up our checks in both cases. And so I think that argues to me that maybe I will be more specific about the checks. So what I'll do is I'll do a conservative coverage. So I'll say basically, give me all of the tile chunks that overlap this rectangle, the camera bounds. And then I'll actually loop through the entities as I pull them in. And if they would be outside of the camera bounds, we will skip them, right? So that way we don't pull in anyone who shouldn't be pulled in, right? And I'm just going to say that that's roughly how we do things. And again, we're just kind of experimenting here, and we're sort of narrowing down on exactly how we want things to work. So it's not essential that our calculations be right or even that they work yet correctly. This is why I'm not doing a lot of testing on that sort of stuff. What's important is that we've structured the code to flow properly, so that we know that when we go to write each individual part for real and dot the i's, cross the t's, that everything is wired exactly as it should be, and everything's in the right place flowing correctly, right? And so that's the important thing to keep in mind, not whether the code is working at all, because honestly we don't care if any of this code works, because we're going to do really good implementations of every individual piece, and that is basically what we will call our engine. And
I don't know, I feel like I care at least a little bit that it works, because otherwise, we can't actually run anything, right? But I can appreciate what he's saying here, generally, which is that we just want to establish this system for when we are setting a camera and we're looping through these entities. We want to do so as performant as we can. And it probably doesn't matter too much for the amount of functionality we have in the game at this point, but like, let's say I wanted to be really ambitious and do something really grand that had a lot of graphical fidelity and all these things, and the way we were updating entities and polling them was very inefficient. That's wasted time and effort by the CPU to do things that are not actually contributing to what is happening on screen, right? So I can understand and appreciate where we're at and what we're trying to accomplish. It's just even though I'm writing the implementation out, it's all still spilling out of Casey's head, and he's kind of he's going through his own process, and I'm trying to kind of like reverse engineer the thing that he does first, which he always says he just writes the usage code first, and then it winds up over time transforming into something that is a lot more elegant. But there's just something weird. I've said this all along. This stream is really weird because I'm like reverse engineering that process, and it's not something you really do often, with another programmer, unless you're doing a ton of pair programming work. Usually if you do a lot of programming, you're sitting with your own process and it's all spilling out of you. So it's all, it's all basically, it's like your consciousness is coming out into the program as you're writing it all out. And then over time, you kind of defragment those pieces and make it more elegant to actually describe what it is that the program does in a very articulate way after you've got it all running initially. Like it's like the difference between, writing a rough draft where you're just kind of pouring thoughts and ideas onto a paper for whatever that paper is about. But over time you refine it and you figure out a better way to structure it in a manner that makes it easier to get the message across. Hopefully that makes sense.
So if you were to spend a lot of time right now actually doing really good code for any particular part here, that's just time.
It's like the difference between being an editor, and that's not really what I'm doing because I don't have anywhere near the expertise that like an editor for a paper would have, or an editor of, for a publisher would have, when it comes to like trying to help an author distill kind of some raw work into an intelligible book. It's not quite like that, but I think you get the general idea.
Wasted because you don't know if you're going to have to reshuffle that area. Like a lot of the stuff we've done, you've seen how many times we've sort of changed our mind about stuff over the course of the past 20 hours or so. You want to make sure that, the 20, 30, 40 hours, however long we spend on doing this sort of pre-work on getting the engine set up right, you want to make sure that you're not throwing away a lot of work. You want to throw away the minimal amount of work. So you just write just basically the stuff that does roughly what you need it to do. You don't care if it works hardly at all. You just make sure that you've got it roughly in pipelinable fashion, that everything flows correctly and all the code connects correctly. And then when you're sure that's all ready, that's when it's time, or when you can start saying, I'm going to write a really good piece of code here and actually think it through and test it. That's the only time you want to do that, because otherwise you're just throwing that work away. So very important thing to remember. I've said it multiple times. I will probably say it again in the future. So anyway. Now what I'd like to do is go ahead and say, let's figure out this camera bound situation. So we did that. This is computing. This is working properly. But now what this wants to do is we want to basically make a min chunk x and a max chunk x and a min chunk y and a max chunk y. And then what we're going to want to do is loop over those. And we're going to want to pull out all of the entities that are inside those, right? And so what we need to do is essentially take what our camera bounds were, and we need to map those camera bounds into our chunk bounds. And so what I think we want to do for that is we would like to ideally have a function that could sort of do that for us, right? If you could imagine saying, okay, we already have the ability to do that mapping. Let's in our handmade world, right? We have the where is it here? Mapping to tile space function, right? And that mapping to tile space function basically takes a base position, which was the camera, and an offset, which would be either of the corners of a rectangle, and that would produce those chunk offsets that we need, right? That would tell us what those chunk offsets should be. Now, of course, mapping to tile space is a bad name for this now because it's actually mapping to chunk space, right? But that's fine, right? So we'll just call that mapping to chunk space, and we'll go ahead and call that here. So we've already got the code that we would need to do this. We'll just do it exactly that way. So when we map into chunk space, we're going to have a min chunk p basically, right? And that's going to be the mapping into chunk space again of that camera p, because that's what we're checking, right? And let me just make sure I know what we're checking here. Let's actually think this through for 1 second, because we may also have a slight mistake here, or just something that we have to think about, I should say. So what we want to do is this is going to go through and move our entities slightly, right? And then it's going to do the move and then check against the camera bounds, which is this right here. So when we move in the new state, yeah, okay, so we're good. When we check the new state, what we want to do is we want to use the new camera position, because that is what should pull things in. That's what should pull in the new things. So we're going to use the new camera position, and then the offset is going to be that rectangle, the camera bounds, and I want to basically get the min of that, right? And I don't think we made like accessors for that yet. I'm going to go ahead and add those. I basically want to do a get min on the camera bounds, get min corner, something like that, right? Get min corner. So I want to get that. I'm going to map it in, then I get my min chunk p, and I do the same thing for the opposite corner, right? So I can get the maximum corner of that rectangle, right? And that'll give me the same thing. Once I've done that, now I know that I can just straight up read the minimum and maximum chunk positions right out of here, right? So I really don't even need these anymore. I can get rid of that entirely. And I can go ahead and introduce the for loop here, like so, where I just loop over all of those chunks that are involved, right? So I've got my chunk x.
So before he goes full speed ahead here, I just kind of want to sit with this for a second and appreciate that, we're no longer working off of individual X and Y bounds, right? We're kind of bundling that, and we're doing it in terms of chunks instead of tiles. Straightforward enough. But I'm looking at this get min, right? And if I look at camera bounds, so it's a rect, like, I guess I don't know why I wouldn't just call that, right? Because that would be the min corner, would it not? Maybe I'm missing something there. Maybe there's some significance why he's thinking he's going to write actual functions to get at that data. But yeah, that's just where my head is at right now. And then, like he said, we'll go ahead and iterate. This might be a very deep for loop. I guess I should just let him, here, this is what I'll do. I will, we know we gotta go 2 more deep, so we can just do that, and then what the heck? There we go. Do that. And I guess it would be, yeah, no, I shouldn't assume. We should just let him finish.
let's see here, where's the position? Right, here they go. So I've got my chunk X, and that's going to start from the minimum chunks, chunk X, right? And then it's going to go until it reaches, and we actually want to include, because this is the chunk that actually includes the maximum bound of our rectangle, right? So I'm going to include it there. So this will loop over from the min chunk to the max chunks X. And I guess I want to go by Y first. That tends to be our conventional, although since we're going through a hash table, in this case it doesn't matter which one we're looping over first at all. I guess I should also just go ahead and copy this and just say, hey, what? That was a X, now it's a Y. Okay, so that's going to loop over all of the chunks. And for each chunk now, we can pull that chunk out and look at all of the entities that are in it.
So we will just dupe that, and this line will be over the Y, and this will be over the X. Sounds like my kiddo just woke up from his nap, and he doesn't seem very happy about it. Is this inclusive? It is. So there we go. What is this actually returning? It's a world position. So, oh, we're gonna do it over the chunks. So that's right. And then I think that ought to work. And I do think we'd probably have to do this same work for the Z as well, right? We'll find out soon enough.
Right? And this is probably going to be a common thing for us to do. And so once we write this loop, we may want to consider the next time, to make a little mental note, the next time that we want to loop over all the entities that are in a particular chunk or range of chunks for that matter, we may want to make an accessor that makes it easier for us to do that. So I'm going to go ahead now and take a look at this world chunk stuff. I know I've got my get world chunk call here, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and call that. I'm going to grab the chunk, and that chunk is the one that's our chunk X, chunk Y, and our chunk Z is just going to be whatever the new camera key was, because at the moment we've really kind of gimped out on Z. We don't really do anything intelligent with Z yet. That's something we're going to have to think about. And basically, before we kind of move on with the engine, I'm going to have to basically add some stairs for real, or something you can go kind of down into like a cave or something, so we can kind of see how we want to handle Z, because I'm still not sure about it. I'm not sure exactly how we want Z to work. There's a lot of questions there, but we know how we want X and Y to work, so we're making sure that those work. All right, so I go into the world chunk, I grab that out. Remember, there may not be a chunk there may just be nothing there, and that's fine, so we want to allow that, so we check to make sure that there actually is anything there. Assuming that there is something there, we can go ahead and loop through the entity count on the chunk, because remember the chunks, oh, I forgot there's one more iteration here, right? We've got these blocks. So we've got rolled empty block, we grab that out of the chunk, first block, right, like so. We then just go anytime there's a next pointer, we chase it, and then we look at all the entities in that chunk, right? So for any one of these...
Okay, so yeah, we were really in the middle of that implementation yesterday when we wrapped up the stream, and we still had all this to do, and I think that's the piece that felt like it was missing. And I think that comes down to the format, right? Like if you can only get it an hour done, you can't expect to get a really complicated piece of work completed in its totality in just that 1 hour. Like, I think I have heard him say before that that's why he wound up switching it eventually to like a once a week 4-hour stream. And I thought a little bit about what to do once I get to that point, if we even get to that point on stream, because I may very well stop following the series or break off and do my own thing before we get to that point. But if we do, and I'm still following it when he changes the format like that, I'm not sure what I'll do, because at that point it would feel kind of weird to like watch an hour of each episode a day when it's like 4 or 5 hours long or however much. So it's just something to think about. The stream may become a once a week type of thing at that point. I don't know. That's far off in the future, though. Not something I need to think about too much right now. Oh, man. It's hard to wake up from a nap. I feel for the little guy. Okay. Yeah, right. So we got to iterate over all those blocks in the chunk. And probably just do this like we did before. And that looks good. What is the matter? It's because we need an address. There we go. And this probably needs to be the address of, or is world already a pointer? It isn't, so yeah. I'm passing it in by address over here. Then, oh, because we don't have chunk Z. Did he already? Oh, okay, so he's just passing it in off the new camera P. Now what? It definitely needs to be a pointer. Well, I guess I didn't bother to check if this is right here. What? Game state. Well, world is already a pointer, isn't it? Okay, yeah, that explains that. I think ran into the same thing a couple times over the past few days. And then this is complaining because we don't have those get min and max corner procs yet. Okay.
Blocks, we do that, and we get the entity out by looking at the low entity index array in there. So there we go. And that grabs it for us. At that point, we know that they have to be, so we could even assert, or we don't have to assert, never mind. We just have to look to see that there isn't already a high entity index for that low entity index, and then we can just go ahead and check at that point to see whether or not it would be in the bounds or not. And so that's...
So he's doing his pointer arithmetic indexing here by passing in this access off of, I don't know what entity index we're on. Oh, I missed that loop. So for entity index in 0 through the block's entity count, forgot that part here. And this should be less than, yeah. Like that. Because now we have the entity index. What is this complaining about? No field, low entities. Really? Oh, the block doesn't have that field because it's low entity indices, right? So instead of doing that, because that looks like a very verbose line, we'll just get the low index out at that entity index and then index it that way. That feels good.
Kind of interesting actually, because that means that the make entity high frequency, where that is, kind of has to be broken up into two parts.
Somehow I did not catch. Hold on. I rewrote this for loop for some reason. I did not see that. It's hard enough to pay attention to my own code. Never mind Casey's code too. And that goes away. So yeah, now instead of getting, because instead of walking the entire, okay, yeah. Now it's all coming together. So instead of going through every single entity index in the game state, right? Because we could have this low entity count value could be somewhere in the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, right? If we've got a ton of entities. We only want to walk the entities that are in proximity to the camera, and those are embedded in the tile chunks. Can totally appreciate now how we got to this place. Awesome. That feels good.
You'll see why in a second. So this right here, that actually computes the position of it, right? This part. I kind of want to be able to do that first before I commit to making him high so I can check it against the camera bounds. So really what I want to do is essentially have another version of this, right? Of make entity high frequency, which is exactly the same and does most of the same stuff, right? But what it actually will do is in the case where you're calling it at sort of the lower level, you will pass in the new P that you want it to use, right? So this P right here. And in the case where you're not going to pass that, then it will just do this code right here, right? So basically that. This is the camera space P, right? So what we'll do here, hopefully this makes some sense. What we'll do here is we'll say, all right, we'll just set the camera space P here, and if someone doesn't know what the camera space P is, then it'll do it like that, right? And furthermore, I'll probably take it one step further and say inline v2 get camera space P, and that will, you'll do that off of a low entity essentially. And I guess for purposes of this as well, I will also pass that low entity pointer, because you're going to have to grab that as well. So the low entity pointer will be here, like that. Excuse me. And again, this is just making sort of a lower level call. This does not really need to be inline, I don't think. That's probably at this point. Well, I mean, I guess it could be, because it's probably only happening in 2 places, so maybe it should be. I don't know. Hard to say. I don't think too hard about that. Like I said, that's something more for the profiling pass. But yeah. Just typically those just tend to be notes to myself about things that I suspect I probably will want to make inline at some point. All right, so here we go. This will actually move up here now. And entity, so that's actually just this. This is our result. There we go. All right, so this will compute that camera space P that we were previously doing before, just right in line. And you can see that it needs the game state to look at where the camera actually is. So that'll get the camera space P. So if you call make entity high frequency now, what we're going to do is just go ahead and punt to the other call, entity high. Like so, and we will just pass all of the same stuff here, but we will go ahead and do that work that wasn't happening before. So we will go ahead and we'll grab the low entities, like so, right? All
right, I suppose I should get caught up with him. I was hoping he would reach a good stopping point where I could then start punching this stuff in, but whenever he starts overloading functions, I have to like stop and really think about what's going on so that I can write a procedure group now. That's kind of the trend that's started evolving. And taking shape. I have to write a procedure group, right? Because I can't overload functions like he can, and I need to think carefully about the names. And in order to come up with good names, I need to think about what each overloaded call is actually doing. So we're going to have, you know, make entity high frequency. Let's see. So in one, he's just passing in the low index. And in the other, he's actually passing in the whole low entity and the camera bounds. So it looks like, and that's why he has this get camera space P function now. Because he gets the camera and then passes that down into that, as he put it, lower level call. So I don't know. I don't like how long I'm having to make these names. Maybe there's a better way, right? But this is kind of what I'm thinking. Make entity high frequency from camera and make entity high frequency from low index. That's basically what we have. The one that takes the camera is the lower level call. And then the one that takes just the low index is the higher level call. If a better naming scheme reveals itself to me, then I guess I'll change it. But I also don't care that much, right, that the names are super long, because whenever we make a call, we're just going to call the, you know, highest level name of the procedure group. Right, and that's something that's just super neat. I find that I like that a lot, because it makes me stop and think, okay, I've got all these overloaded functions. Why am I doing this? Really understand the differences between them so you can make those names meaningful, and then you still get the benefit of only needing to make one call. I don't know if there's anything approximating something like this in Zig, but if there is, I never found it when I was still writing a bunch of Zig to do this project. So just little nice to haves that make me happy every time I get to use them in Odin. Okay, so this call, as he said, is going to go ahead and be thrown up here. And it's going to take that low entity, which I'll just call low, and it'll be a pointer, and then our v2, which is the camera bounds, and this is going to be from camera. Seems fine. And then over here, this is from low index. Is that right? Did I actually name that right? Make entity high frequency from low index. Yeah. So we're getting there. We're almost caught up. I still got to make this get camera space P procedure, and I'm guessing it's camera space because it's going to be inclusive of yeah, maybe it's going to be inclusive of the entire space that the camera is, well, I just kind of assume based off of the name, but it looks like it's actually just getting the difference between that entity and the camera. Yeah, that's all that looks like to me. So it takes the game state, whoops, pointer to it anyways, and then a pointer to the low entity, and this returns what? V2. And where was that? That was it this right here? I see. So that actually, does that bring back a, oh, that's weird. OLS complained that our tile file was gone, but then, oh, that's super weird. Maybe if I just restart NVim, it'll figure that out. Yes, I know Go Please is not installed. You don't need to keep telling me. I should just comment that out in my config. Where were we? We were looking at make entity high. That's actually in the main game file. Okay, so here we are. Get camera space P. Now if I go to definition here, okay, now we're working. All right. So this brings back a V3, which we don't need. We just want the X and Y off of that, and then we return that. Okay, so then in here we would just replace this with, yeah, the camera space P. And I don't know why I called this camera bounds. This is that value that we're calculating. Finding it difficult to appreciate why we are not doing this calculation here. I guess it's because we're not always going to, yeah, I don't know. At some point along the way, I lost the reasoning behind moving that into a param that could then be calculated. I guess just to make it really easy to do this with just this one call here, right? Which is the only thing we have left to do. So here, yeah, we get the low entity out. Why can't I go into my editor? There we go. So we get the low entity out, and it's going to be a pointer at that low index. And then we get that high entity out after we make the low entity high frequency. Pass in the game state, that low entity, the low index, And I guess we still need the camera space P, right? Get that off of the game state and the low index. And then return, whoops, we can spell return correctly. I did not close that call right. Well, we're missing, yeah, that's right, I didn't finish writing it. Okay, why can I not assign this? Oh, because this actually takes the low entity. Right. So now we're probably good, it looks like. Easy enough.
When we grab that low entity, we will, at that point, I guess, so I guess do we really need to check this? Because I guess what we really want to do is sort of, I gotta think about this a little bit, hold on a second. I think what I want to do is say this is a low level call, right? So what I want to do is say that check, right, is going to happen here, actually, and this is actually going to be an assertion. So basically, if you're calling this routine, this is the lower level routine, I'm expecting just flat out that you did not, that this was not there, right? And I guess I could be, again, I could guard it a little to make sure we don't go horribly wrong, but I'm just gonna assume that it's not there in this particular case. So yeah, I think I like that better. So then when you call this one, which is the kind of fire and forget method.
Hold on, gotta get caught up. We want to assert that that's greater than 0, essentially. Is what that looks like to me. And then he's still doing a guard here. But where is he going to get the high entity out then? I guess never. Like it would just never return. We're never going to call this with it not being high frequency already. And so we just don't need to deal with that. And then do the guard, like you said. So we're not duplicating essentially the low entity into a high frequency. And then need to actually take that so I can move it into that higher level call. I suppose we want to do that, right? So that we can actually, well, yeah, he wasn't done, so I should see where he goes with this before I just write my own crap that I have to rewrite again.
Where you don't necessarily know what's going on. I'm going to change this to my standard form. So I kind of decided to stop using the addressing forms. It's not what I normally do. I was doing it for purposes of the stream, but it didn't stick. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and say, all right, get the entity low. If it's already got a high, then do nothing. If it does, then we'll do it this way. And this has got to be, obviously, oops, high. This has got to be cleared out here. Either we grab it from the ones that already exist, or we go ahead and make it, and then we return out the entity that we found.
Okay, so this is actually, I'll just make this explicit. This is our result. And here we check to see if the entity at that low index already has a high entity, in which case we can assign it right out and then pass it back. Otherwise, we do this. And everywhere that we see high, we should say result to make it clear here. And then that's what I did wrong. I did not save that camera space P assignment. Good? Looks good.
found or made. And then this will still make it exactly as it did before. And of course, now we have to actually call this function to get the camera space p in the case where we have to actually make it, because now it's a 2-part call. So this is the camera space p right here. And that will do nicely, I think. So that gets the camera space p and passes it, right? So now, because we have this broken into parts now, it's a lot easier for us to deal with here. We know that we've already checked against all of this stuff, so we can...
Sorry, Soko, I did not see your message there. But what I've been working on now for going on 7 weeks is this kind of imitation project called Handmade Hero. That is what this individual here, Casey, started nearly 10 years ago now. It's a series where he programs a full game from scratch in C and C++, but I'm doing it in Odin, so I'm kind of transcribing the work he's doing in C, in Odin, live, and kind of trying to continue on with the spirit of what I think his series was originally intended to be, where he's kind of showing all of these mistakes that he's making as he's kind of thinking through the process of how he wants to design the engine for this game that he has in mind that he wants to build. And the exercise for me is fumbling through learning concepts that are new to me, either just generally, like conceptually in terms of like the game engine aspects of it and like game development and the ramifications of building these different systems on like what the actual gameplay is going to be. And also learning Odin at the same time, because I haven't been writing Odin for very long. I think like I'm probably already on the 3 month mark, because if I've been doing this stream for 7 weeks, almost 7 weeks, I think I started writing Odin like a month before-ish, a month before I started streaming. And so, yeah, that's what we're working on. And it's a long road to get to where we want to go, which is that eventually I will have learned enough from Casey over here to be able to go and prototype my own game ideas, because that's the end goal of where I want to be. It's both, I want to be able to kind of do a hobbyist thing where I'm prototyping game ideas, and maybe I land on an idea that I'm so excited about that I actually want to turn it into a full game. I also just want to get into the domain of graphics programming. That's a field that I'm very interested in at this point in my career, and that's something that I'm going to be, it's like a 2-part goal for me. And that's what I'm working on, and hopefully that answers your question. So, what was he just talking about?
Right. So now
my short-term memory just completely abandoned everything that we were talking about, everything he was talking about before I went on that tangent to answer that question. It's okay though. I appreciate the question.
Because we have this broken into parts now, it's a lot easier for us to deal with here. We know that we've already checked against all of this stuff, so we can grab the camera space P after that point. We grab that low entity out, and then we can use the exact same check that was happening here in offset check frequency by area. And so let's go ahead and grab that offset check frequency by area, and we will go ahead and grab that is in rectangle call right here, right?
I see offset and check. Okay, where are we calling that? Back over here. Okay. So over here, he was saying this is where we'll assign that. And that should be a colon, not a semicolon. This should have been an address, should it not? Yeah. So we get that out, and like he was saying, at this point, we know that the difference here between the low entity and the camera is within the bounds that we care about. So then it makes sense to go ahead and do this. I think that's what he just said.
So we could make that call. We check the camera space P, okay, and this is going to be our camera bounds, like that. And then if it's assuming that it's in that rectangle, now we know that it's definitely a candidate for moving into the high space. So we can go ahead and do that, and we can do that with the stuff we've already computed, so we don't waste anything there. All right, so we've
That is in rectangle call. Wasn't there before, was it? Yeah, he just added that. Okay. I was looking at him write that code, and I didn't follow any of it. I don't know what's going on. I think I started the stream a bit too late today. So now my brain is just like, you know, what is code even? You look at this stuff too much. Go outside. It was a really nice day today. I didn't spend enough time outside. It's getting to that time of the year where it's just bitterly cold out, and the days are short. Sun goes down before my workday is even technically over. And so I need to make more time to be outside when the sun is up, because it feels good to have the sun hit your face for just a few minutes a day. Okay, so all of this goes away then. And is it really that simple? This is wrong. This should be the camera space speed. Does that really take a V2? It does, but this is wrong. It's because, oh, yeah, this should be the camera bounce. Writing code and reading gets very difficult this time of day. Thanks for the answer. I really admire the fact that you know where you're trying to reach and the clear vision you have. Good luck, my friend. Well, thank you. Yeah, I do have a clear direction to go in. I don't know that I necessarily have a thing specifically that I'm trying to reach. I mean, certainly to be competent enough and confident enough in my own abilities to prototype games. That is a kind of a concrete goal, but then like now you've got a whole new world that you're stepping into, which is like, okay, yeah, you can write some game code and you can develop systems for an engine, but like, and this is the classic like threshold that I think a lot of people that write game engines or like experimenting with game engine tech in their spare time, it's a hard threshold to cross, which is like, how do you make this concrete and cohesive and drive a game idea, a notion of a theme that you want to do with a game to like some sort of thing actually resembling a game. I feel like then it feels like starting all over again almost, is the way when I read people talk about that experience. And an example I'll use is another person who does stuff on YouTube with Odin. His name is Carl Zielinski. I've mentioned his name a few times here on this stream. And he does a lot of great educational content that has helped me kind of get jump started with Odin. And he talked about how he always tried to do games on his own. And it wasn't until like over the last year when he discovered Odin and kind of dove deep with it and started using Raylib as well to prototype his own game ideas that he finally was able to complete a game, which was called Cat and Onion, just a little indie game that he kind of worked on from scratch using those tools. And he talked about how that experience made him really enjoy the process of making games in a blog he did, which I think I can find it if I try just a little bit. Let me see. Carl Zielinski, I think this article was something like make games, not game engines, or something like that. Solo devs and the trap of the game engine. That's what it was. And so for a long, long time, he wanted to do something like what I'm aspiring to do. And he tried different tools, kind of like I've tried. I think he said he worked with Unity and maybe he dabbled in Unreal. But eventually he comes across Odin and Raylib, and Odin at this point is like a mostly finished language, which is kind of awesome. I'm kind of spoiled by the fact that I get to come into this ecosystem with Odin and just all of a sudden, right, have this awesome set of features that the language gives you out of the box, and it's probably going to hit 1.0 inside of the next year or so, is my understanding. So, yeah, and I was kind of inspired reading, and you can see he just posted this earlier this year. I was kind of inspired finding this, and I was already trying to go in that direction, right? Because I was already doing a lot of this work that I'm doing in Zig, and also the fact that he was making content at all. You know, I don't aspire to make the kind of content that he does because I don't know that I would necessarily be very good at making educational content. And he also does like devlogs, and that would probably be more of the thing that I would do that's similar to what he does, where if I ever get to that point where I am serious about a game idea, then I could do, that's what the stream would become, probably organically, right? Where it's, I'm just doing a devlog once a week or something like that. But anyways, there's so much work to be done between now and then, and so you know, you just got to do the thing, really, is what it comes down to. And that's one thing that I do have a very clear idea about, is I know I just need to keep doing the thing every single day over and over until maybe it'll be the thing I get to do you know, full time. Who knows? But if nothing else, it's a really rewarding hobby, and it feeds back into, you know, all these other good aspects of all these other aspects of what I do for a living in a good way. So there is that.
From moving into the high space, so we can go ahead and do that, and we can do that with the stuff we've already computed, so we don't waste anything there. All right, so we've done that, and we're happy. Everyone's happy in the world. And so now all we have to do is just, we change that map into tile space, obviously, to be mapped into chunk space, right? Map into chunk space, like so. And now we just need our get min corner, get max corner. Make entity high frequency. None of the two overloads could handle all the argument types.
Guess I should just try and build and see what was going on there. So that was
max corner. Make entity high frequency. None of the two overloads could handle all the argument types. What did I forget? Is it that the low comes first or something? Define the corner, get max corner, chunk space.
Right, because we renamed that. Duh. So instead of tile, what the heck? Instead of tile, that's, well, couldn't I just do that? Yeah. Need to remember the work I've already done, so I don't need to keep on doing it again. It's always helpful. Right, and then get min corner and get max corner. Maybe he did write those functions already, and I just decided not to write them because, you know, like I said, I can just call camera bounds dot min and max, right? I don't know, we'll see. Oh no, never mind. Yeah, it doesn't look like he has written them yet.
High frequency, none of the two overloads could handle all the argument types. What did I forget? Is it that the low comes first or something? Yes, I suppose that is. And so in our math library, we've got those rectangles. We defined them. We haven't really done much work to make this a nice sort of struct to deal with, but I'm going to have a get min corner and a get max corner, like that, so that I can, you know, grab those out. And again, the reason that I'm doing that is just because I find it's nicer in the code to be able to kind of say what I want to get out of them. And so later I'll probably, you know, we could also do something like this, get center, right? These sorts of things. So when I have my rectangle, in any of these cases, what I'm actually doing here is just sort of returning out whatever the part is that the person wanted. Result equals rect min, so there's that, and there's that. So I will quickly blast those in, like so. And then this one will just be obviously the min plus the max divided by 2. That's the, right, I mean, the equation for the center of a rectangle is just halfway in between the minimum corner and the maximum corner. That's the center. So if you want to get the center of a rectangle, you could do it that way, and so on. So that just gives us a little more flexibility there.
Yeah, I don't see it. Maybe I'm missing something, but I feel like I'm totally comfortable just calling min here on the camera bounds, because that's all that these function calls he's writing are doing, and I don't know, it just seems superfluous. Maybe he has good reasoning. I wish I could ask him live, but he would probably just tell me it doesn't matter and to stop thinking so much about it. However, where is the rectangle coded? Is it in our math file? It is. So min dim, yeah. So starting from the min, add the dimensions to get the max. There's this min dim call right above it. We can add the get center call that he's written, because I do think that probably makes sense to add as a call. And that's going to return a v2. And my son is just having a very bad day. He's been in a salty mood since he woke up this morning. I might have to wrap up the stream here ahead of schedule and go help him out. Because right now my wife is outnumbered out there. So let's see if we can just get the game into a state where it's building again, and then maybe I'll wrap up the rest of this day off stream. We're just about to the halfway mark, which I'm fine with wrapping up after that point. I'm not sure what else he tries to get into for the rest of the day, but I can cover it on stream tomorrow. I just got off to a late start today, and I'm pretty tired myself, so don't want to drag it on out. Yeah, it's already 5. Marcius, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. What's up, mate? Really cool what you are doing. I'm super excited with Odin. Really nice language. Yeah, I agree. Hey, Visa said, hi, I'm new here. Welcome. Welcome to all of you. I think I did get a few more follows, too. I don't have my notifications on, but Wolf217, thanks for the follow yesterday. And Adept Shinobi, thank you as well. Okay, yeah, let's see if we can get to the halfway mark. At that point, I'll feel fine with wrapping up the stream early.
Center. So if you want to get the center rectangle, you could do it that way, and so on. So that just gives us a little more flexibility there, and then we're good. Now, what's important to remember is we probably have a lot of debugging to do now because we wrote a ton of code yesterday and today. I mean, not a ton of code, but you know, it was only in a small part of an hour, but we still did a lot of typing. We probably got some bugs in here, so we probably have to step through and see what's going on just to figure out at all what's happening. Okay,
so it looks like he's going to trip an assertion here. We'll see if I do the same thing once we try to spawn in our player. And no, we can't even compile and run, so that's a bummer. Shoot. What do? We trust our handy print debugging skills and see if we can at least make it this far in the code. Because I'm a poor man without a debugger. Alright, so I kind of figured we'd be good there. You know, I wonder if this has anything to do with the allocator stuff. I see no reason why we couldn't get here either. So I have a hunch that if we're going to fail, it could be after this call. It does seem a bit unlikely, I guess. If I diff this and take a look. It's all new. Yeah, the only other place we were calling get world chunk. Oh, it's inside of the world file, right? Here, when we actually want to go to allocate a new chunk. I wonder if this is... Oh, dang, I gotta import this now. Wonder if there's something to this here. Because I did talk about that change early, you know, at the beginning of the stream and how that might be a bad idea. Okay, so that's neither here nor there. We don't even get that far. Get world chunk. Jeez, he is really going off out there. I wonder if he's teething or something. G game main. Yeah, so it's in here that the failure is happening. Huh. So we can't even... Where is this first being called? Set camera. It's after... It's probably... Yeah, I mean, it has to be inside of the first set camera call when we're initializing the game. And we didn't even change any of this code, so... Yeah, there's something messed up about this. If I just do this... and go back to the way that was. It's just weird. Because we're not passing it in, so it shouldn't matter. At least I don't think. So we'll just comment that out. And do that. Whoops. Of course. Now I gotta comment those out, right? Okay, now let's see if this is any better. If not, then the allocator stuff had nothing to do with it. Okay, so it seemed as though the allocator stuff had nothing to do with it. I do find it weird that this is happening now, because we didn't even change any code inside of that call, did we? Yeah, we didn't even change anything in there. You just finished your own Club Penguin private server. Now there's a game I have not heard of in a long time. I thought they shut it down, but I guess it came back. I remember that being a big deal. When they shut Club Penguin down. Okay. So is it, it's not on the first pass, but it's after? Yeah. So we say the result equals the next in hash. Oh, this just goes away. I must have added that in or left it in when I wasn't supposed to. I think this probably just works now. And if it does, I want to put that allocator stuff back in. Come on now. Runtime assertion, is that the same assertion? It sure is. Awesome. Okay. Well, that's good news. Now let's make sure that that allocator code is back in place. Just check to make sure my wife hasn't hit the panic button at this point. Normally, you know, he wakes up in a bad mood from his nap, because waking up from a nap in the middle of the afternoon for whatever reason, and you know, this happens to me too. I wake up from a mid-afternoon nap. I haven't taken a mid-afternoon nap in a long time, but when I would do that sort of thing, I would wake up feeling groggy. And I think, you know, if you ever take a nap in the middle of the day that lasts longer than like an hour, you know what that's like, where you wake up and you just feel totally out of it and sluggish and like super hot, even just like you feel bad. And I'm guessing that happens to him basically every single day. But normally he snaps out of it and he starts, you know, having fun and, you know, learning his ABCs or playing with his toys or whatever. But today is not his day. He woke up even this morning in a bad mood, and usually he's in a good mood first thing in the morning. So I don't know, some kind of bad day. He woke up on the wrong side of the crib. Where was I calling that? So yeah, allocator. That's actually in world, isn't it? Allocator here. Okay, that's what I was looking for. And what is the matter? Oh, did I not save this? Oh, I didn't or uncomment that import. Do I have any more commented out print statements hanging around? That, we don't need that. Okay. So now I think we're good. Or maybe not. Yeah, that's right. I didn't change those if statements. We'll just go ahead and re-comment those out. Now we should be good. Okay, awesome. So let's see what the issue is, and then we'll wrap up the stream.
To make sure that things aren't going wrong. All right, so first things first, assertion check. So we're getting the assertion here. Someone is actually trying to make entity high frequency, who apparently already is high frequency. And so I'm just going to go ahead and try to find out why that is happening. Let's take a look at that. So, okay, that was from a call for get high entity. Who was doing that? This was doing that. So this was calling get high entity. Get high entity is actually turning something into, was that the intention of this call? I'm kind of interested in that. That's kind of odd that it's making something high frequency when I don't know whether that's really what we intended. But we'll think about that a little later. Anyway, when we go to make that high frequency, obviously this function should have checked against that, right? This entity low high entity index should have guarded against it. So I'm kind of confused as to why. Oh, it's easy. Wow. Took me a while. I just assumed that there was a bug, but there actually wasn't a bug. It's just the assertion that's broken. That's the bug. So we're trying to assert that it is equal to 0, not that it's not. We want to make sure that there isn't one yet because we're about to make one. Duh.
Well, I guess I totally misunderstood the purpose of this assertion then, right? Like what I thought the original intent behind it was that if we've made it into this procedure call and this low entity already does have one, yeah. No, my understanding was correct. It was just, yeah, I wrote it the exact same way he did it. Although he did it like this, right? Which is saying that, oh, there's already an index there. But we don't want to assert that there's one already there. We want to assert, because otherwise there's never going to be, if we do this, then there can never be a high entity. Yeah, just kind of, that's what I get for not thinking about what I was copying from him.
All right, good work. All right, so now we're in a situation where we should be seeing entities because there should be some entities moving into the high space there, but they obviously aren't. And so what we need to do now is actually start going through our spatial partition, debugging it, making sure that it's working properly, and making sure that our query for it there is also working properly. All right, so.
Okay, so that's probably, going to take the whole rest of the day. Yeah, we're about at the halfway mark, and I'm sure there's going to be a few bugs that'll pop up that we'll debug here. But I'm going to get out of this room and go see if I can cheer up my son. And tomorrow when I come back earlier rather than later in the day, I'll explain, very briefly what the issue was that we debugged for the rest of this day, and then we'll carry on with day 59, which will be adding some new entity types. So we'll actually get out of this sort of spatial partitioning stuff, and hopefully that'll give me the kind of bandwidth that I need to really concentrate on the problem we're solving. I think I've got a good internalization of it now. That it's just tough because there's a lot of moving pieces here. I mean, now we didn't even have a world file when I started the stream. Well, that's actually not that long, but this main game file, how many lines is this now? Over 1,000 lines. So actually not as much code as I guess I would have guessed, but there's enough going on that it's hard to keep it all together in your head, and that's why you even see Casey sometimes stepping over himself because he's got some old idea. And I think I can just get rid of this because we're not doing that anymore. We're just adding entities. So anyways, yeah, kind of a short stream, but we'll be back tomorrow and we'll make up for it, and we'll forge ahead and keep working on Odinmade Hero. So thanks for hanging out with me on the stream, and I'll see you next time. Have a good rest of your day.